Hello, this is Chantel Harris, your school counselor. Today, we're going to talk about cognitive distortions for our Tier 1 lesson. So, what is a cognitive distortion? A cognitive distortion, when you say cognitive, that refers to the brain and how we process through things, okay? When we say distortions, it's something that's not quite clear, it's distorted. So the way our brain is processing something is not quite clear, it's somewhat distorted. So we call those cognitive distortions. So cognitive distortion usually consists of negative thoughts that pops into your head and it's almost automatic, like you can't control it, it's just happening. We also call cognitive distortions ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. Okay? So when you have ANTS, it's important to pay attention to what your thought is saying. So it's almost like you got to slow it down, the automatic negative thought, through the process of your mind computing things, slow it down and realize that your mind is being invaded by ants. You're having negative automatic thoughts. But in order to do this, you have to be able to identify and label it as an ant. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about is, and I'm only going to probably talk about four of the cognitive distortions. Is way more. I'm going to give your teachers some information about them so you guys can review the other ones in class or throughout the week or even on your own. Just kind of read through them and see if you can relate to any of those negative or automatic negative thoughts. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is all or nothing thinking. That's basically when you say it's either good or it's either bad, and there's no middle ground. It's either right or it's wrong, and there's no middle ground. It's either black or it's white, and there's no gray. So it's like one extreme or another extreme, and nothing else in the middle. Okay, that's all or nothing thinking. So an example of that would be if I don't get an A on this test, I'm a failure. Okay, or if you're drawing a picture in art and the picture isn't perfect, you think, oh my God, I'm the worst artist ever, or I'm never going to get this right. So it's like all or nothing. There's no middle ground. So like, let's say you get a B on a test. If you get a B on a test, but you were hoping for an A, and you go into the all or nothing thinking. So you're not even giving yourself props for what you did right. Okay. So that's the negative cognitive distortion. That's called ignoring the good. So basically, you pay more attention to the bad things instead of focusing on the things that's going positive in your life. The next one is mind reading. So this one is everyone thinks the worst of you. Like when you think you can read people's mind, but whatever you think that they're thinking is a negative thing. So oh, my friend didn't wave at me when I walked past. They must not like me anymore. Or my teacher must think I'm stupid because I asked a question because I didn't understand. Okay? So it's like you assuming that you know what someone else is thinking, but whatever their thought is a negative thought. Okay? The next one is catastrophizing. You think about an ant. You think about a hill, okay? And then you think about ant in a molehill, but then if an ant look at the hill, they see it as being bigger than what it is. So catastrophizing is um blowing things out of proportion, thinking it's worse than what it is. Okay. So, like a little situation where it could be a simple solution, instead of thinking of a solution, you catastrophize. Oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to do this. I can't get it together. Like you panicking kind of, but over a small situation. So it's like you're looking at a small hill as like a mountain instead of like a hill for what it is. Okay. So those that's two right there. And that goes along with blowing things out of proportion or blowing things up, which is another ant or cognitive distortion that's making a really big deal out of small things. Okay. So making it worse than what it is. So I'm not allowed to see my friend on Friday. My life is horrible, like that. So it's like basically, if you have a negative thought and you take it to the next level where there's a negative thing attached to it, that's when you know you're having an error in your thinking, which is a cognitive distortion, or what we call ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. So it's important that you pay attention. Okay, so I'm gonna list up on the screen some more cognitive distortions, ANTS, or errors in our thinking, so you guys can see what it is. And this week, I want to challenge you all to pay attention to your thoughts and be able to label it with the cognitive distortion that matches what you think you do. Okay, that's half the battle, identifying what you're doing with your thought process and then slowing yourself down enough to understand how you're processing through that. Because most time it's automatic and we're not consciously aware of it, but it's still happening in our head. So we have to become aware of it by paying attention to what these errors are and not thinking, okay? All right, so let's say we do have these negative thoughts that pop in. Okay, so now we got them. What do we do? Okay, it's this technique that we have called catch them, catch the negative thoughts. We're gonna catch that, and we're gonna check them. Let me put this in place, and then we're gonna change it. Okay, so that's what we basically do. Now, when you catch your negative thought, that's basically identifying what thought you're thinking. So you got to notice that you're thinking a negative thought first. So you got to pay attention. So because it's gonna be automatic. So you got to consciously pay attention when you start feeling sad or depressed or irritated or down or frustrated. Okay, why am I feeling this way? What am I thinking about this? So you catch the thought. Okay, then you got to check it. Okay, remember we talked about Socratic questioning? Is this thought true or is this just how I feel? And then you go into that Socratic questioning, and I'll go into that in a few minutes. So is this true or false? That's how you check it. And then you change it. So you change it to a more helpful thought. So let's say you got a B on the test that you wanted to get an A on. Instead of saying, oh, I'm the worst ever, you know what I'm saying, over catastrophizing it, just be like, okay, I got to be, I messed up on this word and this word. Next time, I make sure I practice a little more with these things, and then I'm gonna do better. But I made my best effort, and it wasn't that bad, but it just wasn't what I expected. So you kind of change how you're thinking about things. Does that make sense? All right. So when we think about what we've been learning lately with these cognitive distortions, and cognitive distortions play into what this theory is in therapy called cognitive behavior therapy, with the cognitive triangle. Whatever triggers us, the triggers from the outside, affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. Okay, that's the CBT triangle. And the cognitive distortions go in line with the thought process with that. So how we think, that's important because normally our thoughts is negative, is automatic, we're not aware of it. So it's slowing us down enough, and I'm giving you education so you can know what it is and practice slowing your thoughts down and identifying them. So when you think about cognitive distortion, what was really happening is when we have a situation that doesn't turn out the way that we would like for the situation to turn out, it makes us kind of freeze sometime, or hide from the situation, or make us not want to move forward. Okay, like it slows us, it stops us in our tracks, and it makes us not want to grow from it. It basically stop, and we just stop wanting to do the thing, or it makes us feel sad or depressed if we think about doing something that hurt our feelings, even if we were aware of it, it was conscious, or we were not aware of it, it's unconscious. Okay, so it's this thing called the growth mindset. And that is believing that you can develop abilities through hard work. And we're not fixed. We're not a fixed sign where we believe our abilities are innate, like we believe we were born with it. Either you have it or you don't. It's either I was born this way or I wasn't. That's a fixed mindset. But a growth mindset helps you embrace the challenges that comes with learning and growing. So with growth, it's not like an easy path, where it's not like a straight, narrow path. It's like ups and downs. I learned this way, my feelings got hurt here, I got stressed out there. It's curvy, but if you can learn from your mistakes, that is another half of the battle. Okay, so you learn from the mistakes, you become more wise. Wisdom starts to become a part of who you are. Okay, so when you have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, growth is, I may not be the best at this, but the things that I'm not good at, I'm learning from. A fixed mindset is either this way. I either know it or I don't. I'm either born this way or not. So there's no room for growth. It's like you just think this is just how I am. Every person has the capacity to change, even their worst habit or like the worst personality trait. You have a capacity to change if you're willing to grow, to learn, and embrace life and the challenges that comes with life. Okay, so when you have the ability to grow in your mindset, which is what we're doing when we're catching our negative thoughts with these cognitive distortions or these ants, we're identifying which one we relate to so that we can catch it next time, and then we can check it, and then we can change it. Does that make sense? Okay, so with the growth mindsets, we strengthen our relationships. Okay, we become more resilient. When something happens bad, we know how to bounce back from it because we're learning skills and we're practicing skills. And then the first or second or third time you practice a skill, it may not feel right. It may feel awkward because you're not used to doing that, because things have been so automatic and just what you're used to doing. People get into the habit of being and doing what and how they used to be. That's just what they do. But when you start practicing it after maybe the fifth or sixth time, you're going to feel the difference. You're going to feel better. But it's going to be uncomfortable because growth is not comfortable. Growth is gonna, just think about as a, you were little babies, you were infants, and then you grew into toddlers, and then you got taller. They call that growing pains because as your little limb starts to expand and grow, it hurts. That's the same thing when we start to grow in our mind. It's not going to feel comfortable. It's going to feel uncomfortable initially, but the more you embrace change and understanding and have compassion towards yourself and others as you go through this, the more it is easier to transition and you can expand more. Okay, so it's like you ease your way into it. I don't know if you guys do exercise. Sometimes you be doing those jumping jacks, and the first 2 or 3 times you do them, you're out of breath, you're real tired, everything hurt on you, you sweating. But then after like a week or two of practicing those jumping jacks, it's like it's easy, it gets easier. You can do more. You can do more. That's the same thing with us practicing these skills that we're learning about cognitive distortions and the CBT triangle and the wise mind. It's like you're learning these new skills. The only way to get better at it is to practice. Initially, it's going to be hard, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the resistance that comes when you try to make changes. So if you think about negative thoughts, negative automatic thoughts, ANTS, and you say, well, how do I cope with it? So let's say you have a negative thought that pops up. So you want to challenge that irrational thought. And whatever that irrational thought was, whether it was ignoring the good, blowing things out of proportion, fortune telling, mind reading, negative labeling, setting the bar too high, self-blaming, feelings as facts, or should statements, whatever it was, it caused you to have anxiety, for example. And so you went through your little check system. You could catch them, check it, and then change the thought process, right? You went through that system, but this is how you do it. So let's say it's anxiety is a rational thought and it's magnified. You feeling like really anxious. You have sensations in your body, your emotions. You feel nervous. You know what I'm saying? Your heart's beating fast. You're having all those sensations. So what I need you to do think about the CBT triangle. Your thoughts are up here. You got triggered by something and inspecting how you think. Okay, so you got to challenge it. So you ask yourself, is my thought based on facts or feelings? Am I doing this based on how I feel, or is this true? Okay, how will my best friend handle the situation? How likely is it that my fear will come true? What's most likely to happen? And lastly, if my fear comes true, will that still matter in a week, 2 weeks, a year? So that's how you, in your thought, you challenge that negative thought, okay? Through Socratic questioning. That's called Socratic questioning. You putting your thoughts on trial and you asking questions to see what's true. Is this based on feelings or is this based on the facts of the situation? Okay, that makes sense? Now let's say we have depression. Let's say whatever happened or whatever you think in your mind, it got you all distorted. It made you feel depressed, okay? So you minimizing the positives when you feel depressed, and it's kind of like you're at this low point. So what you need to do is you need to focus on positive experiences. Okay, I'm gonna write about 3 positive experiences that happened to me within the last week or 2 weeks, and it can be as simple as the weather was perfect when I went for a walk, or I got I got a good grade on my test. Just think about 3 positive things. We call that being grateful, making a gratitude list. So you could choose the questions to kind of help you get to that point. You could say, okay, why does this good thing happen? Or what was good and meaningful about this? Or how can I experience more good like this? Okay, and you repeat this every day for a week to try to get in the mode of thinking positive instead of negative. And this is how you help with the emotion of depression. Okay, being grateful, showing gratitude. Even though these bad things happen, what are 3 good things that happened this day, this week, this month? Okay, so that's how you help with depression. And then the anger feeling. So let's say you triggered by some situation on the outside, but whatever it triggered, it made you angry. So what you do with that is you have to be proactive with that. You have to work on it before you get triggered. So what I want you guys to do is get used to identifying, noticing, catching the negative things or the things that make you upset or angry and write them down. We call those triggers. So you write down what your triggers are. I don't like when people cut me off. I don't like when people tell me what to do. I don't like, whatever it is, just write it down. So then look at the list daily. So when it happens, instead of you automatically responding or going into that negative mindset with those ANTS, those automatic negative thoughts, start saying, okay, I'm triggered by this. You know what I'm saying? And either when you notice what you're triggered by, either you do things to avoid it, which is okay, or you can get into the mindset of because you're aware of it is in your when you're aware of something, your mind is conscious about that thing. So if you're not aware of it, it's in our subconscious, and we're not fully sure why we feel angry, but we feel that anger there. So if we can identify and attach the reason to why we feel anger, we can work on lessening that anger. Does that make sense? All right, so this is our lesson on conflict. Is really on identifying negative thoughts, but it helps lessen conflict in your life when you can identify your emotions and why you're feeling that way. Like, what am I thinking to make me feel this way? What negative cognitive distortion, what negative thought, negative automatic thought, or cognitive distortion is causing me to feel this way? And then get in touch with that distortion. And then how can I cope? How can I change like my reaction to this trigger, for example? And that's when we look at those skills that I just listed. Okay. So that leads into this idea about conflict resolution. And with conflict resolution, that's similar, but it's more like when we get triggered by something, we'll react and respond. And normally it's automatic. We're not thinking. We just kind of respond real quick instead of processing and listening and trying to understand a person from their perspective. So next week, we're going to talk about conflict resolution. But this week, I want you guys to focus on identifying what your cognitive distortions are, catch it, check yourself, and then change the behavior. Okay. All right. And until next time. All or nothing thinking, which I think kind of coordinates with the first one we said, which is all. Oh no, we did that one already. All or nothing. Sorry. Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing.